Ladies and gentlemen, Seth Mattison.
All right. Every 25 to 50 years, something happens that radically transforms the way we work. Think the Industrial Revolution of the late 1800s. Think the post-World War II boom with women entering the workplace, our workforce doubling in size, the expansion and explosion of the professional management model, the start of our modern workplace. Fast forward to the 1990s, the advent of the PC and the proliferation of the internet and email and our digital work environment. Think 1994, Katie Couric, what is the internet? How many of you remember that moment, watching it live, not in repeat on YouTube, laughing at it, thinking how foolish it is? Fast forward 30 years, COVID. Perhaps the greatest experiment ever experienced in the world of work. Each one of these moments brought with it its own unique set of challenges. And change of that magnitude is always hard, but that level of disruption is messy. And it takes time for all of that change to shake out. And we rarely get it right out of the gate. But at the same time, each one of those moments, they gave us an opportunity to reassess, to reimagine, redesign, rethink how we do this thing called work, and the type of leaders that we have to become in order to meet the moment. Now, the reality is for us in this room who are meeting this inflection point, the stakes have never been higher. We have never had to collectively compete as hard as we are for a smaller and smaller number of qualified potential employees, while simultaneously staring down unbelievable growth opportunities in our individual marketplaces. How many of you sitting in this room right now feel like my business could 10x right now if I could find the right people? Raise your hands. If I get the people, we will grow. I see the opportunity. You know, one of the reasons why I love a room like this is your industry, representing multiple industries. My business, we're industry agnostic. We're serving and supporting everyone from technology to the trades. And so it gives us perspective as to what everyone is confronting, and it's universal across the board. I have a huge opportunity. There's huge growth if I can get the people. I'll give you an example. We were just in upstate Michigan, Midland, Michigan. I don't know if we have any Michigan folks. I was with I had got some people in the back, awesome. Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. So these are your road construction companies, your bridge builders. You're putting in the sewer systems. You think you have a hard time attracting talent. Try putting an employee value proposition together to hold a sign on the side of the highway while you drive by at 70 miles an hour in 10-degree weather in Michigan. And offer something up beyond just pay and compensation. Right? It's an unbelievable growth opportunity. Mentoring. What's the value prop? They're feeling the pinch because if you've been paying attention at all, you know, we passed the infrastructure bill. Michigan is set to receive about $10 billion over the next decade. All of those business owners in that room, they're just like, there is unbelievable opportunity if I can get the people. Now, what was fascinating to me, and one of the things I've always been interested in, is, of course, even in that room, there were leaders who have no problem keeping people in their organization. They don't have double-digit open positions. They are a magnet for talent, even in a dirty, difficult, hard industry. Why? Why? I'm fascinated by that question. You know, is it the compensation package? Is it benefits? Like, it has to be more than that, because so often we're competing in a space where if someone pays $1 more, my talent leaves. $1 more, boom, they're gone. But there was this small group of leaders in that room, and and I believe that there is a small group of leaders in this room that replicate it as well. They don't have a problem attracting and keeping great people. And here's why I believe. Do you really get into the conversation? Each and every one of them had this unique opportunity, this unique ability to essentially see more in people than they see in themselves. Now, why does that matter in a vertical on a space like the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association? And maybe in a room like this, where, again, I know we've got all the industries represented, but maybe you're in a service space, and it's like, I heard Matt talk earlier, just this campaign of like, this isn't just your first time job. How do we position these things as careers, opportunities for you to be future franchisees? Many of the people that group of leaders is trying to attract, and you might be able to relate to this. Many of the people they're trying to attract, the people in their lives have told them that they probably won't amount to much in their life. Very few of them actually had someone look at them and say, you have unbelievable potential. If you're on a roadside construction crew, the truth is that life has thrown you some curveballs. And there is a massive group of them who show up, and they don't see very much in themselves. They have a cap in their belief in themselves. And so this group of leaders, they weren't even consciously aware of it. We had to tease it out of them. What they do is that they see more in every person that encounters them than those people see in themselves. It is an unbelievable gift to be able to do that. You start to think like, do I do that when people interact and encounter me? Do I help them see more in themselves than maybe they even see in themselves? Well, the only way you can do that is if you are deeply rooted and grounded in knowing who you are, right? The epitome of wisdom, according to Aristotle, to know thyself above all else. And why does that matter right now as leaders? Because the stakes have never been higher. And the organizations that are going to thrive and grow through this, are going to have to take an alternative strategy and approach and lean into this. I think it'll be one of the ultimate eras of experimentation as we claim what work is going to look like in the coming decades, as we claim what leadership is going to be, and we step into that. Now, we've got a short period of time together. I just looked down and realized that they just whacked off about 10 extra minutes of my time with you. So we got to get moving. I've got 20 minutes to share a little bit of research. So my firm, Future Sight Labs, we spent the past 15 years with one focus: helping leaders prepare for the future of work. Navigating change, preparing to move through disruption, attracting great talent, developing, keeping, inspiring individuals so that you can grow the business. I'm gonna share with you 3 big observations that I and the team have observed about how the world of work, the workforce, the world is changing. And then I'm gonna share with you 3 very specific insights that we've observed being with high-performing, category-leading brands, and I feel very lucky. We're inside 15 of the top Fortune 100 right now, helping them design what work's gonna look like in a post-COVID or with COVID world. 3 observations of what the best of the best do. And then I'm going to invite 3 remarkable leaders to join me on stage and talk a little bit about this transformation. We're gonna talk about the theme of technology, culture, mental health and well-being, how you position yourself in this moment to navigate change and capitalize on the opportunity. So let's get going. Let's get off to the races. Observation number 1. We approach this work, the team and I, by starting with questions. 3 big questions that we asked. And the first one we asked was this idea of what matters now. What matters now? We're seeing the research coming out around how people's perspectives, values, wants, needs, they're changing during the pandemic. What matters? What do we value? And why does that matter? Because what we value ultimately determines what we do. Your values drive your behaviors and your actions. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with his work, I'm a huge fan. He's a dear friend. David Allison, researcher, Canadian, coined the term value graphics. David is surveyed, has almost close to 1 million surveys deployed around the world, all to tease out what we value as human beings at a global scale. Largest study ever conducted. Sort of bridging the fields of sociology, psychology, and neuroscience to get to the root of what you value determines what you do. Whether you're consciously aware of it or not, your choice to stay here today and not fly home speaks to a value that you carry. Every decision. So what do we value? And how is it changing? Because it's interesting. You look at the data. This came from Oracle at the end of 2021. 93% of survey respondents said that they had reflected on their values over the past 2 years. 88% of people said they had a new definition of what success looks like for them. This has been a collective existential experience for all of us. What do I mean by that? I mean, in this pandemic pause, we were all given the gift to reflect and ask life's biggest questions. What do I care about? What do I want? What do I want from my life? If you've ever worked with a coach before, you know the first question they ask you is, what do you want? Which sounds like a really easy question, but until you've been confronted with it and you have to articulate it, you know it all comes. What do you want? What are you willing to sacrifice in pursuit of success? Raise your hands. How many of you, at least at one point over the last 2 years, had a moment of reflection to really interrogate what you value most in your life? Raise your hands. Cool. We got about half the room. Everybody else is like, I was too busy making money and trying to keep the business afloat. I didn't have time to think about it. I get it. I understand. Don't worry. It's never too late. There is a chance to drop in. Before you leave, as you're flying home, like that would be one of my provocations of like, drop in on the flight home of like, what do I want? You took all of this information from your time here over the past couple of days. What do I want to create next? The reason I bring this to your awareness is because our talent, our employees, their values are shifting too. How do we know that? Again, outside numbers. 4.3 million people quit their jobs in August of 2021. Anybody remember when those numbers first started to come out? We were just like, that was 250,000 more than in July. People were like, what is going on? And I had so many leaders say to me, Seth, trust me, this is all this government assistance. We're paying people to be on the sidelines. As soon as we stop paying people, they'll get their butts back to work. September, 4.4. They had some savings. This is the conversation. Savings, they're coming back. October, 4.5. November, 4.5. December, 4.4. At some point, we have to take some self-reflection as leaders and say something larger is happening. This isn't about people just not wanting to come back to work. This is about people claiming a new definition of what success looks like in their life. And so what is the employee value proposition that we lay down that it would invite someone to come along with me on this journey? I have a clear and compelling vision of the future, and it aligns with your values because my heart tells me, because I went through it, you've evolved what you care about over the last 2 years. And I want to make sure that we're tracking together. You want to know how you know if you're missing this? If someone walks into your office and leaves and it's a surprise to you, you missed it. You don't have to raise your hands, but just think. Did some of you have people leave that totally surprised you? You thought they were with you. We were aligned. Out of nowhere, boom, gone. And it's not just entry-level service people. This is high-level executives too. New York Times published this 2 weeks ago. Executives are quitting too. This was a profile, 15 C-level executives leaving big jobs, big positions, hundreds of thousands of dollars in salaries, raising their hands and saying, I want to design something different. So you're sitting here in this room, you can't just be thinking about our entry-level, service-level talent. You need to be thinking about your executive team. I haven't had a serious drop-in, check-in conversation with Brenda once in the last 12 months to really understand how her values are changing. Don't let yourself get surprised. Number one, what matters now? Number two, how work-life changed. Under this theme of just like, how has work life changed for us? And certainly, again, I acknowledge we've got great diversity in this room. Some of you, service, essential workers, people on site, you're like, we didn't have the ability to go remote. We have to be on site, or a part of my team. They're in the trenches doing the work. They're in our clients' homes. I acknowledge that. right? So some of these shifts, you might be like, that wasn't exactly true for us. This is across the board. We tracked what we call 6 micro shifts under this theme, and they broke down like this. And I'm just gonna cover 1 or 2, but absolutely take photos of this. All of these are incredibly important. I wanna touch on increased boundary transitions and network constriction. Increased boundary transitions. We've had to get really good at listen, first of all, I'll say this, but we know in the data pre-COVID, 90% of us spent the majority of time while we were working at a physical location. Only about 10% of people worked full-time remotely. Most of us were going to a physical location. And in that, you develop this sort of persona of you put your game face on and your personal self steps into place and you enter into the world of work. And I'm my professional self. And when you go home at night, you sort of morph and transition on that drive home or that walk home, shed that armor, or maybe you put the armor on to go into the home environment, depending upon the situation. And now I'm my home self. But during this, you wake up in the morning, you roll out to the kitchen table, and you're in a performance review conversation in Zoom. You're teaching 6th grade math, 8th grade algebra, praying your kids go back to school because they're not gonna make it if you keep teaching them. And you're chatting and having conversations with your significant other or your spouse. How many of you used your boss voice with your spouse or significant other once or twice over the last 24 months? I 100% did. My wife's head snapped around so fast, she's like, who do you think you're talking to, pal? I am not in your audience. I have a tendency to pontificate a little bit, right? I can get on the kitchen counter and give speeches. I actually had this remarkable financial advisor. She came up to me after a program. She said, Seth, I didn't use my boss voice with my spouse, but what happened, she's like, I've been serving my clients from home, and she's got 3 kids under 12. For all of you moms and dads, parents out there who had to go through COVID through this, my heart goes out to you. School's back, it's canceled, you're teaching lessons at home again. How do I do that? Anyway, she's at home. There's a rule. You can't come upstairs between 9 and 3 when mommy has meetings with clients. Okay? Distinct lines. 3 o'clock one day happens, right on the dot, she hears, boom, 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 boom. Door flies open. Face looks like, this 8-year-old face looks like he just saw Santa Claus. And he says, Mom, you sound so nice when you talk to your clients. And you know what that means, right? They've been getting that mom COVID voice for the past 24 months. That I am gonna murder somebody in this house if y'all pull it together. How many of you can relate to that? Kids have been getting, yes, I see a lot of hands. Get it. Boundary transitions, network constriction. This is relevant for all of us in business development, relationship development. This research is around the idea of our tight connections and our loose connections within the umbrella theme of network theory. And the idea is that our tight connections got tighter over the last 2 years and our loose connections got looser. What do I mean by that? Tight connections are teams that maybe we started to see every single day, or if you formed a bubble in the early days of COVID, you saw neighbors and friends, those tight connections got tighter, but our peripheral networking relationships, think of all your friends that you saw here that you haven't seen in 2 years. Your loose connections get looser, and the scary thing with that is so many of our great referrals, right, for employees or business opportunities, ideas, innovation, come from our loose external network. And so the question I want you to leave here with is just thinking, really simply, how do I ensure my loose connections don't get looser in 2022? What's a little strategy that we have to touch base? The last one on this idea of energy depletion, we're gonna talk a little bit when I invite our leaders up. The state of mental health and well-being right now it's alarming. And I'm tracking it every single day to see when do we shift? We're kind of coming out of this valley of darkness. We're starting to emerge into the light, but it feels tenuous. How many of you, you're hopeful, but you don't want to let yourself get too hopeful? Does anybody else feel like that? I do. I'm so excited to be here. I've been dying to get back in person, but I'm holding myself back from really being fully excited because I did that in July and August last year, and then what happened? Freaking Delta rug. And then in December, right back again. Can I let myself be hopeful for the future? but how do we support people through this mental health and well-being? We're going to talk a little bit in the interviews, but one thing I want to show you, and I think this is going to be interesting for those of you who are hosting events for your franchisees and bringing people together, or your internal teams. As we transition into hybrid and remote work, bringing people together, we want to make these moments experiential and deeply impactful. So we're seeing organizations like Salesforce. I don't know if anybody saw this news. This got published, I think this was a week or two ago. Just made a big acquisition of 75-acre ranch called Trailblazer Ranch, south of the Bay Area. And the whole idea there is, Benioff is like, physically being together matters. We can work from anywhere, but when we come together, it's got to be meaningful. And so instead of coming into the office, we're going to go someplace where deep bonds can be created. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, I'm not in a position to buy a 75-acre ranch. But maybe you're rethinking, like, should we just go to the Boston Hyatt and sit in a conference room? No offense to the Boston Hyatt. Maybe we want to put people in a situation where it's deeply enriching and nourishing to the soul, so that when we're together, it matters. How work-life changed. And the last of the three I just want to briefly touch on is this idea of who holds power. And for those of you that have followed my work, seen me speak before, this was one of the core areas of our research. We published a book on this subject back in 2017 called The War at Work, and we were looking at this tension that's growing of influence and power between leadership and talent and companies and customers. It's interesting, I was at an event in January, and the client that I was speaking for put this on the screen, and I thought it spoke so loudly, and it's so beautiful. We're entering the era of employee power. This tension between leadership and employees. Who has a voice? Who has a say? How do we organize? How do we connect? And to sort of get at this, our research, we discovered this has been an ongoing battle, a tension, a battle between two forces. And those forces are what we call hierarchies and networks. And I'll give you a little visual to bring this to life. I want you to think about this idea of networks. Right, we're entering into a reality right now in this moment that looks and feels like a living, breathing network. Networks of people and connections, ideas, information, powered by machine learning, mobile and social. Our organizations and clients and customers are being influenced by this, but the challenge we have as leaders, owner-operators, is that we didn't come of age in that world. Most of us in this room, we came of age in a world where the structures and, more importantly, the deeply embedded culture of hierarchy has been our reality. And today, these two worlds, this new emerging world of network and our existing historical traditional structures of hierarchy, which, by the way, there's nothing inherently wrong with either one of these systems. This is not a message of hierarchy is bad, it doesn't support us, we've got to move into a nebulous networked type structure. It's understanding what these forces provide for us. To give you the 2-minute version of a 2-day program, I would simply distill it down for you like this. What was hierarchical structures designed to do for us? From an enterprise perspective, certainly it shows up in nature, but it was designed to do what? What does it give us? If you think about it, hierarchy, it provides for us stability, clarity, predictability. But with those things comes what? Very little freedom. Tightly defined roles, super predictable, and this system worked in an era when the marketplace was also quite stable, quite predictable, quite clear. We could mirror that. Is that what our world feels like today? No, which is why we feel tension points there. What about network? Well, network's not a perfect solution. It's not the end-all, be-all, but what it does give us, network provides freedom, but with that freedom comes what? Ambiguity and uncertainty as things change and move very fast. Now, when we say network provides freedom, what do we mean by that? Network. And again, network representing all of our new technologies that connect us. The latest manifestation of that would be Web3 and the decentralization of ownership and power. It gives us access to information. It gives us access to contribute. It gives us access to each other. It gives us access to each other's capital, so collectively we can rise up. And you can take on traditional structures of power. So all I want you to think about in this trend of who holds power is inside your organization right now is just recognizing we want just enough structure, just enough order so that we've got systems of predictability. We've got standards. We want just enough structure, but how and where am I infusing freedom into my organization? And I use the word freedom very intentionally, not flexibility. Everybody talks about flexibility. Yes, people say they want flexibility, but what they really want is freedom, and there's a big difference. Flexibility is, we're flexible. We give people the choice. You can 2 days a week, you can work anywhere you want. That's not freedom. Freedom is saying, I'm going to empower you to work where and when you need to so that you do your best work, period. I'm going to give you the freedom to expand into the highest iteration of yourself. Now, with freedom comes what? Incredible responsibility and incredible standards of excellence. How do I infuse freedom coupled with just enough structure? What matters now, how work-life changed, who holds power. 3 very quick insights. So how are these unfolding? And more specifically, how are our clients responding? Okay. What are the best of the best doing in response to this? A couple of strategies that you can implement. Breaks down number 1 like this. Here's the first big insight. You ready? Chill out, no one knows. Number one question we've got over the last, you launch a business called Future Sight Labs, people ask you about the future. What's the future of work gonna look like? What's the formula, Seth? There is no one formula. Every single organization that we're operating inside is taking a slightly different approach. There is no one plan. A simple example of that, one manifestation of that, of course, is like, do we get rid of our real estate? Do we keep ourselves together? Even if it's your back office supporting the field. What do I do with that? Do we try to do hybrid? Nobody knows. We've deployed 2,500 surveys over the past couple of months leading up to it, and it broke down like this. So, we're looking for an insight. What did people say? 6% saying fully remote, 30% hybrid, 28% in the office, 36% all of the above. What do you do with that? I'm not here to tell you what that should look like. I'm here to tell you, I want you to empower yourself and your people to choose what's right for you. And to do that, it's not one specific formula. You need a framework. So the framework I want you to use, and I want you to take a picture of this, is this framework. We want to be thinking in terms of jobs and tasks, employee preferences, projects and workflows, inclusion and fairness, to design something that works for everyone. Why do we say 3 days a week? We're going to do 3 days a week, either in the office or at home. I ask every single leader that. And you know what the answer is? Well, because I had to pick a number between 1 and 5. Legitimately, right? And it's like 2 or 3, that sounds about right. Is 2 or 3 the most optimal number for you to create what you want to create? Is that the very best number for every single person in the organization? Does this job, is it best executed with the energy of a bunch of people, or is it better if they can do focused work outside of the office? I'm not here to tell you what it looks like. You have to design that for yourself. And just for the team, give me 2 minutes. I'll close these last 2 out. And then we'll go to our first interview. Second insight is this: change the COVID channel. This was a really interesting, eye-opening conversation. In December, Chief People Officer for one of the big 4 accounting firms, global organization, about as sophisticated as they get. I'm asking her, what do you see? How are you designing work? In a post-COVID world, she stops me dead in my tracks and she said, Seth, don't talk to me about COVID. We're not talking about COVID anymore. COVID is a swear word in this culture. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. Why? She's like, it's not that we don't think it's real. Of course we do. But what we found is that by constantly attaching all of our change initiatives to COVID, it's created this frenetic, anxious culture. We're all waiting for the next shoe to drop. Nobody is committing. You know what everyone's doing? They're trying to get through it. How many of you in this room think about your team? People are trying to get through this right now. To get to what? to get back to what was. Gang, we went through a space-time freaking portal and we are in a new dimension now. We're not going back. It's not new normal, not next normal. This is the new dimension. And so the sooner we can get people to understand that, we can move them into a space. And the way we do that is this idea of we tell ourselves the truth. The truth will set you free. What are you not telling yourself the truth about? That's happening inside your organization. The truth about your ability to move through change, the truth about what's happening with customers, the truth about our value proposition to employees, the truth about fill in the blank. What I want you to do leaving here is moving from awareness of these changes into ownership. My guess is much of what we've talked about today you already were aware of. I recognize that. Most of the time I come out, there was nothing groundbreaking. You're aware of it. But your ability to close the gap between awareness and ownership is the whole game to transformation. How do you know when you're in awareness? How many of you are in constant circular conversations with yourself, your executive team, and your organization? What do I mean by circular conversations? You're in a meeting and you're like, we've been talking about that initiative for freaking 10 months. We've been saying we're gonna do that thing for 3 years. We said we were gonna implement that. Is a circular conversation. We want to move from awareness to ownership. That's your take-home question. Are there any changes in your business reality that you are aware of, but haven't taken full ownership for? And you could add your team. Anything that you're and the team is aware of, everybody's aware of it. We go in the meeting, everybody nods their head. Yep. And we go out in the hallway, and then what happens? Go right back to business as usual. And the last thought is this idea of embracing the futures of work. What do I mean by that, the futures of work? Remember what I said, there is no one future of work. There are only futures. And so your opportunity, your responsibility is to claim the future that is right for you. The future is what we make it. We are not bystanders. We are not victims. We're not sitting on the sidelines watching this unfold. We are creating it. We are the creators of our reality. And I want to elicit an army of people that want to create a future that is freedom-infused, that is heart-led, and that is human-centered. With a group of leaders who operate in a space where they deeply and truly love people. Now, I know some of you in this room maybe just thought, love people, bro, I barely love my family. You're asking me to love my people? Yes, love. We can call each other up as fellow human beings to our place of highest potential. Doesn't mean that you don't hold people to incredibly high standards. And loving people sometimes might be sending them down the road for their next adventure.